What the heck is going on, my carnivore family? It's your boy Danny here, back with another episode of Unapologetically Carnivorous. Now, did you know there are about 50 trillion cells in the average human body? And there are about 100 trillion atoms in the average human cell. Now, despite this vast complexity, I'm going to attempt to do the impossible today and explain to you everything that you need to know about human nutrition and satisfying the varying needs of all of those cells in your bodies in about 10 minutes. Now, it's my contention that if you know a few simple and uncontroversial facts about human biochemistry, you should be able to determine exactly what you should be eating. Now, if you've seen my video on nutritional context, you know there is some measure of human bioindividuality involved in this process. But this is a really great starting point for the average human being, as are our two commandments here at UC, which are eat meat, move weight. Alright, taking the macronutrients in order of importance. First up, we have protein. Protein was first described in detail by the Dutch chemist and world champion powerlifter Gerardus Mulder in the mid-1800s. His associate Jacob Berzelius proposed that it be named after a Greek word which comes from the word protos, which means first. And protein is first and unique among macronutrients because it's the only one which contains nitrogen. Yes, that nitrogen, the nitrogen that we rip out of the air in the Fritz-Haber process and jam into fertilizer, which we then jam into the soil to make stuff grow. Now, fat and carbohydrate, by contrast, are made up of varying arrangements of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which we can hear in the name for carbohydrates, which is simply hydrated carbon. Now, of all the trillions of atoms in the human body, only 3.3% by weight are made up of nitrogen, but it is this 3.3% which is absolutely crucial for human health. Protein requirements are not negotiable. The body utilizes the amino acids that protein is composed of to make incredibly important enzymes, peptide hormones like insulin, antibodies, muscle fibers, neurotransmitters like serotonin, blood carrier proteins like hemoglobin, idiot, and our hair, skin, nails. Alright, it wouldn't be important once we're grown, right, because that's what protein does, except for the fact that our cells are nearly constantly turning over most of their protein. There are long-lasting proteins in the eye, for example, that exist for years or even your entire life without turnover, but they are the minority in the human body, and protein turnover or churn is the normal condition. Now, today in a first world country, even on a vegan diet, it just isn't hard to get adequate protein. However, it is obvious from observing vegans, regular vegans, not steroid and supplement using YouTube super vegans, broccoli anti-edible! They're just only getting enough protein, right, just to maintain very little muscle mass on their skinny frames. Muscle tissue is metabolically expensive, and to build and maintain it, there are many other crucial body processes and functions that take precedence over this process. It's why we intuitively understand muscle mass as a marker for human health, because building it only occurs when all the basics necessary for human survival have already happened. In developing countries, protein deficiency is possible, and it typically manifests itself in a disease called kwashiorkor, which is inadequate protein or nitrogen intake in the presence of adequate caloric or energy intake. Now, this typically occurs to children who have been weaned upon the very early arrival of a new baby. They're then delivered over to a diet that is dominated by carbohydrate, predominantly rice, which makes them third world vegans. The name of this disease literally means the sickness that comes when the new baby comes. Now, there was a case of this disease reported in the United States in 2010 in the Dermatology Journal, which actually mentions a few other cases. It happened to an 8-month-old child that was placed on a diet that was mostly composed of rice stream milk, sweet potatoes, and bananas. So, good luck to YouTube's Banana Girl. What this means is that energy intake is not enough. Protein intake, not for the purposes of energy, but for all its other crucial purposes and bodily functions, is at least as important, if not more so, than energy intake. This is why the average person can only last about 60 to 70 days without protein intake. It means that they won't outlast their own fat stores, their own body's energy stores. That's why pretty much all of that show, Naked and Afraid, is about securing protein and not securing something called calories. Second up on the list, fat. Can't live without it, right? The brain is 60% fat. Fat is necessary for absorbing fat-soluble vitamins. It's a major component of the myelin sheath, which is absolutely crucial for brain and nervous system function. Fat is also an insulator in the protect you from the cold sense. Fat also provides structural protection for our bodies. In fact, fat is essential for every single human cell, since the cell membrane, or the outer layer of the cell, is made up of fat. Saturated fat, the stable and solid at room temperature fat, is what prevents you from being a big gooey puddle on the floor. It's what divides up all the waters in your body and provides them with form and structure. And lastly, and I want you to really think about this, fat provides essential lubrication nearly everywhere in the body. So the next time that somebody tries to give you that tired old chestnut about fat clogging up your arteries, I want you to tell them that fat is a lubricant and it's sugar that makes stuff sticky. Now, the body readily and easily digests and absorbs most fats, much of which bypass the liver and get sent straight via the thoracic duct to the heart. Now, the heart is a muscle that is powered, unlike skeletal muscle, almost entirely aerobically and almost entirely on, I want you to take a guess, fat. So that's right, eat your heart-healthy, fat-free whole grains to power your heart, which is running on an entirely different macronutrient. Now, because fat is so essential for survival, the dietary efficiency of fat is incredibly high. We're talking on the order of like 99%. Now, what this means is that cells readily take it up from the bloodstream, and it has the lowest thermic effect of all three macronutrients. Now, all excess calories, that is those that aren't burned off immediately for energy, get stored in the body as fat because fat is the body's preferred energy source at normal human intensities. Fat is a dry, dense molecule with about twice as many calories per gram as its big brother glucose, which is a large, sprawling, hydrophilic molecule. Now, this makes fat perfect for both energy storage and energy production at normal human activity levels. Now, fat is stored in the human body at a ratio of polyunsaturated to monounsaturated to saturated fats at about the same ratio that as pig lard. That means the body's preferred way to store calories is as pig fat. So, bacon up. Now, however, as we already talked about, fat is not just for energy storage. In fact, if you ate nothing but lean meats, you would eventually get protein poisoning, which is often called rabbit starvation, and get sick and die. We can only go for about 6 months without any fat, which means that man cannot live on protein alone. Now, lastly, we turn to the much maligned macronutrient, carbohydrate. Now, unlike protein and fat, there is absolutely no need for a dietary carbohydrate after infancy. Not one. Zero, zilch, zip, nada. There is no such thing as an essential dietary carbohydrate. Now, this does not mean that glucose is not incredibly important inside of the body. It is. It just means that we don't need to obtain this glucose from our diets. Glucose is the brain's preferred fuel source. It's the only fuel source for our red blood cells, which don't have mitochondria, so they must generate energy anaerobically with glucose. Glucose is also necessary for weightlifting at high intensities, where the phosphocreatine pathway is dominating energy production. Now, I'm not a carb phobe or a keto zealot for precisely this reason. Goals and context matter. Now, what does this mean for all of us? It means that calorie is not a calorie and that all calories are not equal. A calorie is not even a helpful abstraction for most of the context of human nutrition that we're concerned with here at UC. So what should we eat if we aren't eating this thing, calories? Now, we're going to boil everything that we learned here today down to 4 simple rules. First, hit your protein target each and every meal, and this must be done because we cannot store protein in the body the way that we can store fat and to a lesser extent carbohydrate, and we must continually meet the body's non-negotiable and insatiable need to turn over protein. If it doesn't have meat in it, it ain't a meal, and we don't snack here at UC, so pull your head out. Second, focus on fats. Cook the meat from step number 1 in some butter, some coconut oil, some avocado oil. Heck, eat an avocado, bro. Alternatively, you can eat a larger piece of fattier meat like an organ meat or some fish. Third, ensure that your body's micronutrient needs are met. Now, what this is going to mean is eating fruits and vegetables. For me, that's spinach and broccoli with lunch and dinner, and a serving of berries with whipped cream for dessert after dinner, or some berries with breakfast. Fourth and last, we're going to adjust our carbohydrate intake based upon our activity and intensity level. If you're a sedentary office worker and you're not exercising, you're not going to need that many carbs, right? But if you're a CrossFitter, power lifter, Olympic lifter, mountain biker, hiker, or rock climber, then you're going to need a lot more carbohydrate. Now, what that means is an appropriately sized sweet potato or a serving of safe starch like white rice with your lunch and your dinner. Now, that's it. That's all there is to it, man. Nothing else. We're going to talk about restriction and what not to eat in some other videos, but a quick rule of thumb for you while you're in the grocery store is to stay on the perimeter and avoid the aisles, which will enable you to not eat anything in a bag, box, bin, bottle, or bucket. Remember that real food rots and it doesn't come with an ingredients list. Now, I've posted a bunch of links supporting everything that I've talked about today in the description down below, and I encourage everyone to check out those valuable resources. But if you like this channel, you like this content, you like the direction I'm taking things, do me a favor, fam, smash the freaking like and subscribe buttons down below. Once again, it's your boy Danny here at Unapologetically Carnivorous, reminding you, eat real food as much as you want, mostly meat.